Alright, boys. I couldn't sleep tonight because I was just going through like how am I gonna edit the section about the Red Horse of the Apocalypse to make it comply with YouTube's community guidelines. I don't think it's productive or edifying to create content that goes against community guidelines of the platform I'm uploading my videos to. When that's just gonna get me striked or removed from the platform, just to be able to make a proposal that we could be in the apocalypse that then wouldn't even be heard anyways because the proposal contains content that's going to get the proposal removed from the ears I'm trying to reach with this proposal. So I was like, how can I even talk about these things when the community guidelines won't allow it? And I was like, well, what even are the community guidelines? How can I follow them if I don't even know them? I haven't even read them. So I went through and I checked on them and I found out that they pretty much um, go point by point stating the opposition's points as misinformation. So if you say anything on that list in a way that's not satire, you're labeled as a misinformation person and you are silenced and censored. And that is a business decision made by YouTube um, to satisfy their advertisers, perhaps, who may be liberals or maybe people that just agree with the mainstream narrative that's being pushed by um, various government systems, the beast system, the antichrist system that's in operation today all over the world. So is YouTube actually, do the people that work there believe in this? We have no idea. I mean, it's a massive, massive company that makes a website for content providers. They could have people bringing down policies from above who are part of the Antichrist system. Th- these policies can actually be sent down from the boardroom of the Illuminati, for all we know. It could be the Antichrist could be literally alive today, not yet revealed, and this could be coming from his office, trickling down through the chain of command, right into the YouTube community guidelines department of a massive company that's, I believe, probably traded on the stock market. So the Antichrist could be to blame. So we don't need to be hating on YouTube as a website. It's a great website, but they're getting their orders from above. And it's God's will at the end of the day, anyways, that we enter the apocalypse if we're in the apocalypse. So God would even be allowing all of this. Remember that. Okay. So what I'm saying is that if these things that YouTube is saying are misinformation, are actually true, then that strongly supports the argument that we've just gone through the red horse of the apocalypse. Um, so you can go through the list of the community guidelines misinformation topics that they say are not true, and you can research them yourself. And if you find that YouTube's right, they're misinformation, then all is well, and we're not in the apocalypse. Everything's going really well, and nobody's telling a lie, and we're good. The only people telling a lie are the people telling the misinformation. So there are people who are teachers, former government officials, active senators, um, immunologists, virologists, um, researchers, doctorates, um, common everyday people just sharing their experiences, just giving their facts that they've observed. Um, there are people from all walks of life, thousands upon thousands of people, as well as countless studies, countless testimonies on various of these quote-unquote misinformation topics that are being released onto the internet with no apparent gain involved other than to lose their jobs, be deplatformed, be censored, be hated, be vilified, um, be pushed into a corner, ostracized, cut off, losing their pensions, losing their careers of 15 to 20 years to be whistleblowers, to stand up against what they believe to be misinformation. And yet YouTube says they're the ones doing the misinformation. And who's making the money here? Who has skin in the game? Well, who's making billions of dollars from everything going on? From the pandemic to the response to the pandemic. Actually, it's trillions of dollars. If you can create a problem and then solve the problem, or the problem wasn't created, but you have a solution to it, that solution, if you're being paid to provide it, is $1 trillion on the line. So anyone that's saying no, don't go along with the solution being offered is vilified. Well, look at the money. Why would they be vilified? Because there's a lot of money to be made here. If everyone says, yeah, that's the right solution, then the money flows. If people decide, no, we don't think that's the right solution, let's find a different solution, then the money stops, and it's trillions of dollars. So the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil, according to the Bible. And so you can really see the root of the problem then, and the reason for the censorship. And I thought of an analogy. One is the Matrix. So if you take the blue pill, you say everything you're being told, everything in the world is true, there's no lies going on, and everything you've been taught your whole life is true. And life goes on as normal, and you might have a sneaking suspicion something's off in your gut, but just ignore that and just swallow the blue pill, and life goes on as normal. Until what? I mean, is that sustainable long term? Well, not if we're in the apocalypse. That's gonna lead to you taking the mark of the beast eventually. If you choose to take the red pill, then you find out how deep the rabbit hole goes and how much you've been lied to, and you get woke up and you find out you've been living in a matrix of lies. And I'm right now kind of straddling between the two pills, with the red pill being something I'm looking into, and I've gone down the rabbit hole, and I've been shocked and alarmed, disgusted, jaw dropped countless times. I'm blown away by it. I've done enough research to actually have my mind blown. And BitChute.com is a great place to have your mind blown, and it is taking the red pill. Now, what is BitChute.com? Why do I keep bringing it up? Well, there's BitChute.com, there's Rumble.com, there's a couple others, but basically, YouTube was the king of videos online. You go there, you upload your videos, you make a bunch of money on their partnership program, and you get to have an audience, and it's great. And Twitch is the king of live streaming, but YouTube's starting to compete now. But YouTube decided to start censoring heavily, and it actually started with PewDiePie, and they started censoring in order to make everyone ad-friendly. But now the censorship has become more and more politicized, more and more left-leaning, more and more radical, and more extreme. And if we are entering the apocalypse, the censoring now is becoming dangerous because it's actually going to be preventing an open narrative on topics that are very serious, that are potentially life and death, and potentially will involve the Antichrist system and the mark of the beast if we are in the last 7 years, especially, or approaching it. So it's not really fun and games. It's very serious and unethical and takes away freedom of speech. Now, I'm not saying that YouTube is breaking any law. They have the right to believe what they want and let people upload what they want. And that's a business decision. And they're going to try to do the best they can for their investors, and they're following orders from people above, and that could be the Antichrist desk himself. Okay? So I'm not hating on the employees of YouTube or on the website itself. I think it's a fantastic website. Um, but I'm not in favor of the censorship that they've chosen to do. But I'm saying that from the perspective of an uploader, not wanting to be censored, and from the perspective of a viewer, wanting to read both sides of the story, wanting to watch both sides of arguments, not just be spoon fed what they want me to hear. As a viewer, as a consumer of YouTube primarily, with secondary, I'm an uploader. That's not what I want as a viewer. I want to hear both sides, but that's not what's best for YouTube in the eyes of YouTube's leadership. So YouTube and I disagree on this. As far as that being unethical, I believe it's unethical to throttle free speech when you are the means with which people communicate. You have a monopoly on communication. I mean, unless if I'm talking to my wife or my dad in my house, or somebody at church or whatever, my social circle is very small. But if I want to communicate with the world around me and learn what's going on in the world outside of my little sphere, um, I use YouTube as my connection to news, to information, to all kinds of stuff. And if they're going to be telling me what I'm allowed to learn about, that's a huge red flag. I think that's unethical because it's throttling free speech. Um, but it's ethical from a purely capitalistic, money-loving business sense of just making the most money you can for your stockholders. And so there's a conflict of interest there because it's all about money. But YouTube doesn't claim to be um, pinnacles of virtue and freedom of speech and for the common man, and they don't care about the money. They just want to be wholesome and virtuous and let everyone express themselves freely, so that can be YouTube, so you can say your truth or whatever. They're not interested in that. They're too big of a company now. It's about money for them. So um, I respect that from a businessman's point of view, being a small business owner, but I don't respect it from a human rights point of view. I think it's unethical from a human rights and from a liberty and freedom point of view. And I think that it's leading us into more and more of a totalitarian type of system, which I believe that the Antichrist wants. And so that's part of the beast system that's tightening the noose, creating like a Weimar Germany type of environment. Um, Germany, during Nazi Germany times, controlled the media. If you just read the German newspapers, you would see um, that everything is fine. We love the Jews. You know, they might be a little annoying, but we're not hating or anything. But then if you learned what's really going on, they were gassing Jews in showers or whatever, allegedly. I mean, even people question that. It's like we can't question anything now. We have to just believe whatever story. Um, so the question is, do you just want to read the Nazi Germany newspapers your whole life and end up going into a concentration camp and being gassed? Or do you want to actually find out what's really going on and resist getting on a train and going to a concentration camp and being gassed? Now, when I say resist, it's like, as a Christian, I'm happy to be martyred, and if the fifth seal of the 7 year period is martyrdom, sign me up. You know, I want to die for the Lord. I want to die a martyr. I want to receive the martyr's crown that I can lay at Jesus' feet. That's a great honor. It's my birthright as a Christian. Um, but what about my children and my wife? Do they want to sign up and get in that line to be gassed and tortured and killed for their faith? Are they ready for that spiritually right now? I mean, is my 1-year-old baby ready for that? Or do I want her to be like given to some wicked group to be tortured at the age of 2 or whatever? That doesn't sound really like good parenting from a parent's perspective. So it's like I have to look at all the sides of it. The Lord may not want me to be a martyr. He might not have chosen me for that. I might survive to be raptured during the seventh seal of the apocalypse. That might be the Lord's will for me. So I'm not convinced that I shouldn't try to resist ending up with that fate. Okay, and then also as I was trying to fall asleep just now, I thought of another analogy, which is this. So imagine if the government one day decided, for whatever nefarious reasons, to make the narrative that vegetables are evil, and if you eat them, they're going to kill you. Okay. Now, every news station, they all agreed vegetables are evil. They tell people that every day. Vegetables are evil. They're going to kill you. They're the cause of all sickness. It's all vegetables. We just found it out. The science says if you don't agree with this, you don't agree with the science. Okay. And then YouTube. If anybody says, "Well, I eat carrots," and I thought they're really good for your vision, and I can show all kinds of studies showing the health benefits of carrots. I don't agree with this. And YouTube says, misinformation, you're censored. Get out of here. Because YouTube wants to fit the narrative of the mainstream, and they're being ordered from above to do this. This is their policies sent by the CEO, who's responsible to his CEO, to his CEO. I mean, however high it goes, all the way up to the desk of the Antichrist, right? So 30% of people are just going to say, well, shoot, the news said vegetables are evil and they're going to kill me, so it must be true. So 30% of people won't eat any more vegetables. 20% of people are going to be like, well, or let's say another 30% of people are going to be like, this is whack. Like, I've eaten vegetables my whole life. I'm convinced vegetables are healthy. And I'm not really buying this. So they don't stop eating vegetables, they continue to eat them. But then the government decides, well, this isn't cool. We want everybody to stop eating vegetables. So I tell you what, if you don't stop eating vegetables, you're going to lose your job. And you're going to not be allowed to go to work anymore. You're going to lose your pension. You're going to be vilified. And you're going to be blamed for all the sickness on earth. Okay? So then the people that are in that camp are like, well, shoot, I have a family to feed. I don't want to lose my job. I've worked there for 20 years. I guess I'll just stop eating vegetables. Heck with it. I'll just have to eat more protein and take some multivitamins to make up for it. So then they um, go ahead and stop eating vegetables. So now we got 60% of people now no longer eat vegetables. All because of just some nefarious plot from above, okay? Now you got the final 40% that are like, this is ridiculous. Like, I refuse. Now, eventually, what if the government says, if you don't stop eating vegetables, we're going to actually just kill you? Well, maybe like 30 of that 40% will stop eating vegetables at that point. If it's life or death, you know, they're mad right now, but if the gun's to their head, they will stop eating vegetables. And that just leaves 10% of the population that they know vegetables are healthy. They refuse to comply with a lie that's an obvious lie. And they are going to continue to eat vegetables, even if that means being killed for it, because they want to stand for truth above tyranny and lies and censorship and false narratives. And so they're going to eat vegetables. That 10% is willing to go to death for this. And so that's the part of the 10% I'm going to be in. And I believe that this is a perfect analogy to the pandemic and the solution being promoted for the pandemic. Um, and so this brings me full circle to the red horse of the apocalypse. If it's the blue pill and everything the mainstream's pushing is true and nothing suspicious is going on at all, and the government would never tell a lie, YouTube would never tell a lie or say that something's misinformation that is actually true, and the Antichrist is a wholesome man of God who actually um, worships and loves God, and he would never tell a lie. And the Antichrist and Satan are actually really virtuous truthers, and they just stand for the truth, they die for the truth. Then we're not in the red horse. Everything we've been fed is true. The world is flourishing, and there is no cause for concern. But if you take the blue pill and you do your homework and you actually look into this stuff and you find out it's all very suspect, if not flat out we're being lied to, and you find the immense amount of testimonies and studies and experts and virologists and immunologists and doctors and lawyers and politicians and active working senators and congressmen and governors and all of these people that say that we're being fed lies. And if you think that you can find enough information to be convinced of that, then you're going to be in between two sides and eventually have to pick a side too. And so I'm encouraging people to do their research and not just believe whatever mainstream media told them. And I admit that it could be that the mainstream media is telling the truth, and it could be, that all these people are just whistleblowing and losing their jobs for because they're deceived, and even though they have nothing to gain, and even though all the money, all the trillions of dollars being made is for the side that says the mainstream narrative, um, and and the same companies like Vanguard that own tremendous portions of the media and own tremendous portions of um, all kinds of companies, including pharmaceutical companies. Um, there's no conflict of interest there. It's like it's it's just very sketchy, the whole situation. So I'm encouraging people to do their own research. Now, back to what I was saying about YouTube censorship. Okay, so people saw the YouTube censorship was getting crazy, and it just had been skyrocketing, and that's YouTube's business decision. I respect their decision, okay? And I'm trying to fit their community guidelines, and they've been so forthright as to create a detailed list of everything you can't say. So that's very helpful, and we'll go through that list momentarily. And I'm appreciative of that, because sometimes on Twitch, they'll just be very hazy about the rules, not really showing their cards. YouTube shows their cards. So you're actually able to see exactly what you can and cannot say, which is helpful. Because that becomes like a whole research list, point by point. You can actually go through their list of things you can't say on YouTube and see if they're actually true or false and do your own homework. So it's almost like they're helping you begin the research by telling you everything that is quote unquote misinformation, and then you can go find that out for yourself on other platforms that aren't using censorship to try to push a certain narrative. So that's actually beneficial and kind of, in a way, honest of YouTube to at least be very specific of all the things that they're claiming are misinformation according to their community guidelines. Okay, so that becomes like a point by point checklist of things you need to research to see if it is misinformation or if it's truthful information. So that's really helpful. And it also helps the content creators know exactly what they can and cannot say, so that they are able to not be banned without warning. We're being given a warning in advance. I think that's very generous of YouTube to do that. They could be a lot more shady and just say, any misinformation you get banned for, and then you have to try to figure out, well, what is misinformation according to YouTube, because this doctor said it's true, this immunologist said it's true, these studies said it's true, entire countries and leaders of free world countries have said it's true, but YouTube says it's misinformation. Who am I going to believe, and how do I even know what YouTube thinks? So it's so nice of YouTube that they actually say, okay, entire country policies say it's truthful information, but YouTube says misinformation. Okay. So YouTube's the arbiter of truth. They're not claiming to be. All they're claiming is that This is their policy. And their policy comes down to money. They're a capitalist company trying to make money. So they're not. Do they say it's a lie? They just say misinformation. What does misinformation even mean? I mean, that does imply it's a lie. So that they are claiming to know the truth, even though they're a website company taking orders from above. So if they claim to know the truth, that means they claim to know Jesus. Are they all Christians filled with the Holy Spirit and they know all truth by the Spirit of God operating in them? I don't think so. So how are they so sure they know the truth? Well, apparently they do. I mean, it's just the whole thing is so sketchy and crazy. Um, so, anyways, the censorship on YouTube made some YouTubers or people that use YouTube, doesn't have to be YouTubers, just people that use YouTube, which is most of the world at this point. It's a mega site. Okay, it's like the social gathering place of the modern age. It's like the community center. It's the marketplace of ideas. So think of how dangerous that is for the marketplace of ideas to be able to say which ideas are true and false. Who gives? What gives them? How do they know? Like that's so prideful too. From a certain point of view, imagine if I was the marketplace of ideas and everyone in the world had to ask me what is true and what is false, and I claimed to know. That's prideful. I would claim I'm not infallible. Do they claim to be infallible? Are they all knowing? Are they God? Are they omniscient? Only God knows the absolute truth. I know that everything I say and believe can be wrong, and I'm open to correction. But YouTube's not. YouTube says this is absolute truth. This is absolute misinformation. How do they know? How do they know that? This is subjective. Actually, sometimes it's objective. There is objective evidence to disprove this quote unquote misinformation as being misinformation. But then you can find objective information to support it as well. So then that means that some of these objective pieces of information are misleading. So that means somebody is lying in many, many, many cases. Because one person cannot say an apple is blue and another says an apple is red, and they're both right. So one of them's lying, and there's a lot of lying going on today right now surrounding a lot of these topics. And that's a real problem, and that just leads us to more so evidence that we are in an information war. It's a warfare of truth versus lies, and we got to try to figure our way through it. And that's kind of the whole story of all of creation that God created anyways, if you get into it from a broader point of view. All of life is a search for truth. And Jesus is the truth, the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father except through him. You want to know your Creator? Then seek the truth, and you'll find it. Eventually, everyone finds it. The sooner you find it, the better, because who wants to believe lies? If you love to believe lies, you're a fool. Nobody should love to believe lies. But people prefer to believe a lie because they love sin and they love pleasure. And so they will just swallow lies because they want the easiest route. You know that the narrow way is the way of truth? And the Bible says, strive to enter in through the narrow gate. The broad way is the path that leads to destruction, full of lies. Everyone on the broad path believes lies. So what is the broad path telling me right now? Well, the broad path is telling me whatever mainstream media and YouTube tells me to believe is true or false. The narrow path is telling me, the broad path is telling me lies. So is that always going to be the case? Not necessarily, but not everything the big group says is true is necessarily going to be true. The whole world thought the earth was flat once upon a time, and now the consensus is the world's a sphere. When the whole world believed the earth was flat, did that make it true? No, not necessarily. I mean, unless if the earth actually is flat, which I have not personally tested whether it's flat or spherical myself with my own eyes, performing my own scientific tests. I have not done that. I've probably traveled like this far of this much distance to even go around the world. I've traveled this far in my life. I've been on a little speck on that world. I don't know with my own eyes either way. So I'm trusting other people to give me the information on that. there's a certain amount of trust you have to give people, and you have to try to weigh all the factors and try to sift through what is true and what's not. There's plenty of lies out there. On any topic, you can find somebody that says one thing and find somebody that says something else. And so, this whole life is a pursuit of truth. And God can help you to find the truth. If you seek truth and pray for revelation and pray for guidance from God, then you can find the truth. God will lead you into truth. And the Bible is a great source of truth. Okay. So again, back to what I was saying. YouTube started becoming hardcore censorship land, and then people were like, "Whoa, this is whack. They're getting way too strict with their community guidelines, censoring people that disagree with the narrative they want to push." Okay. So then someone said, "Let's create a website where we allow people to share their view, even if it doesn't fit the mainstream narrative, and especially if it goes against YouTube's censorship policies. That way we get people that can't say what they want to say on YouTube because YouTube censors them, to have a place where they can speak freely." And so that's where BitChute.com and Rumble.com came from. It's a response to YouTube censorship. If YouTube didn't have censorship, then there would not need to be these other websites for people to speak more freely. Now, one of the problems with that, okay, so I read the history of BitChute. Basically, the founder, that was his goal. He didn't like the censorship on YouTube, so he created BitChute. Good on him. That's a great idea. I'm for that. I appreciate that, and I'm going to be registering for that website soon, so I can post and comment on there. It's like a YouTube type website. It's very similar in the layout, design, everything. It's got tons of videos, and it covers a lot of topics that I'm curious about hearing the other side on. I don't just want to listen to the mainstream garbage that's being shoved down my throat. I want to hear what other people have to say and make my own decisions on things. Because I seek the truth. I want to hear all sides so I can weigh all arguments and make a wise decision. I don't want to just be spoon-fed and say, "Yes, sir, you know all things." Like YouTube is God. YouTube's the Bible. YouTube's not the Bible. YouTube can't tell me that they know absolute truth. Okay, so that was the purpose of BitChute. Now, why doesn't the government take BitChute down then? That was what my wife asked. That's a great question. There are government entities actually actively trying to take BitChute down. And they're researching who created this website. How do we go after him? And they're uploading information about him. They even looked up who is his service provider, who offers him internet service. We got to take these guys out. How can we pressure them? They're working on it. Okay, their days are probably numbered. So it's a gift right now to have a marketplace of ideas still around that's free. They even allow quote unquote hate speech. But how do you define hate speech? Some people that are arbiters of what it is and is not hate speech say that the Bible is hate speech. And they are trying to ban the Bible. They say that God is hate speech, because that offends their religious views that there is no God. So to say there is a God is hate speech. To say that there is a God and he has things that he wants humanity to do that are morally upright is hate speech. Because who are you to tell me that someone gets to tell me what to do or what's right and wrong? That's up to my own opinion to say what's right and wrong. So if there is a God, that God is the definition of hate speech, and anyone that claims there's a God is a hate speech prognosticator. This is ridiculous. So the definition of hate speech is so hazy and ridiculous these days that anybody that's just going to say, "You know what, I'm not going to decide what hate speech is. I will just let everybody say what they want to say," and then they have a great policy. You can say whatever you want to say as long as it's not illegal. So if you're like trying to do something illegal or say something that is specifically like going to cause harm to a group of people, then that's illegal.